And so it was my childhood continued. Up until that point, my only friend was my dog, Sasha. I had always taken an interest in religion, but not for a spiritual sense. I was more interested in the philosophy. I was a very developed child, a prodigy, they said. Perhaps that was God's way of making allowance for the monstrosity that he had put on my face. I remember one evening, a group of local boys came down the lane outside the house, shouting. They shouted, "Bring the monster outside." I opened the door in rage, and Sasha ran out. They killed her. They killed Sasha. I buried her in the garden, that house. I asked Father Mansart if she would go to heaven, and he told me that animals did not have an immortal soul like human beings, that Sasha would just rot in the ground. It was at that moment that I turned my back on Father Mansart and the church, and what God punishes a creature, my friend Sasha. I wanted nothing to do with the church from then. A short time after that, my mother, Madeline, began being courted by a Dr. Etienne. The doctor was fascinated by me as a scientific subject, a freak of nature. He and my mother decided to marry, and he suggested to her that I would be better off placed in an institution away from them, where I could receive the help and support that someone of my condition required. That night, I was 8 years old. I ran away from home. I ran from the house in Beaucheville and never returned. I ran into the night and left my mother, Beaucheville, far behind. I fell in with a band of traveling gypsies. A freak show run by a man named Javert. A repellent individual, as I recall. They put me on display. They called me Le Mort Vivant, the living death. He called me his little corpse. I used my skills that I had developed in the house, ventriloquism and magic, smoke and mirrors. I was a sensation in the show, and I think somehow Javert resented that. But I stayed with the gypsies. I I had nowhere else to go. And in time I found that I had a level of acceptance with them. I would not say that they loved me, but they certainly feared me. And I found that I quite liked being feared. I think it was my 14th year. One night, Javert came to my tent. He was drunk, as I recall. He placed his hands on me. I was young and naive and stupid. He told me that I should be flattered, that no one else would ever want me like he did. Something snapped in me, and I pulled the dagger from his belt, and I gutted him like the fat pig that he was. And he died there on the floor. And I smiled as he died. He was my first. I fled the gypsies and never returned. I do not know to this day if they even knew who had murdered Javert, or if they even cared. I fled to Italy, where a new chapter in my life started, with a stonemason by the name of Giovanni.